Hello, my name is John, and in this video I'll be reviewing the Sharp Twin Famicom system. Came out by Sharp in 1986. This is an official licensed product by Nintendo, but made by Sharp. So let's take a closer look at the system itself, talk about the history and how it came to be. Here is the Sharp Twin Famicom system. Came out in 1986 by Sharp, but was licensed by Nintendo, as I mentioned earlier. Cool thing about the system is it takes a Nintendo Famicom and it takes Nintendo Famicom disk system and puts them into one system, which is really cool. And this came out in 1986, the same year that Nintendo released the Famicom disk system in Japan, and 3 years after the Nintendo Famicom hit the market. There's a number of reasons why Nintendo wanted to really push disc games rather than cartridge games, because for a long time the cartridge games in Japan did not have batteries in them, so you couldn't save them. So you could actually save files on these games, which was a huge benefit. They also had kiosks around Japan where you could actually blank disc and you can kind of copy games and like download games into a kiosk and go home and kind of rent them and try them out and then take it back and download a new game. It was kind of like Redbox is today for movies, which is really cool, but for games. Here's a closer look at the system itself. I like this is a red black model, or almost like a pink color, and they also have a black and red model, so it comes in two different colors. You got your standard Famicom controllers. Nintendo Famicom was very successful in Japan. I like the look here. It's got the big one here in case you don't know what controller it is. They are hardwired into the actual system itself, which is kind of unfortunate. You get your B and A button, your start and select, very similar to what like a Nintendo NES controller would look like. And then there's a holder right there for him. Here's controller 2, and just like the Famicom system in Japan, there's a speaker here, a microphone. You can speak into it. Some games you can yell into the controller. Here's a volume slide here. Okay, your BA. This is where your Famicom games would plug into. In case you guys don't know what Famicom games look like, they're almost like half the size of an NES cart. The pin is a lot smaller, so you need an adapter in order to play these on a US or PAL version of the NES. But these would plug in like so. This switch right here is actually to switch going from cartridge to disc system, and it locks. You can see how it locks, and you can open it up and this opens. So that's pretty neat. And you can't switch if the cartridge is in there. You can't switch to the disc system. I guess it can only read one at a time. And this is the eject button right here. Okay, kind of like a Super Nintendo would have. This is your power button. This is your reset button. This is where your disc games would go into. These are what the discs look like. There's double-sided, so you're playing it, just flip it over. The load times aren't too bad on these things. And an interesting fact is the sound of the music that would go on when you load this is like the same music for the GameCube, but the GameCube, when you load that or start it up, is actually a slowed down version of this, which is kind of fascinating. On this side, left side, you have really nothing special. On the right here, you got another port for like a gun port right here. We go here. This is interesting. This slide right here, you can actually hook up another Famicom. You need a special adapter, but if you had a Famicom disk system, rather, you can hook it up here. I don't know why you'd necessarily need to hook up another Famicom disk system, but if you wanted to, that would go there. On the back, get the hardwired controllers, which is kind of unfortunate. I don't like the fact that it's hardwired. Nintendo Famicom was the same way. This is your AV out, which is nice, especially for mid-80s, 86. That's kind of nice. This is your power supply would plug in here. If you wanted an RF, you had to get there's a special adapter that would plug in here. You got kind of a nice retro logo, Famicom logo here. Here's the deal about the Famicom disk system. Squaresoft, which now is Square Enix, obviously very, very well known for the Final Fantasy series. For a long time, they had actually a company, a division that was dedicated to making disk systems for Nintendo. Almost made them bankrupt, though. They lost a lot of money in the venture. This was pre-Final Fantasy, before they released it. In fact, Final Fantasy was supposed to be on the Famicom disk system, and it wasn't. And because they had issues with Nintendo, they decided to hold off on it and release it for cartridge. So Final Fantasy, the reason they called it Final Fantasy is because it was the last last game they really had money to make, and obviously it was a huge success, and the company's huge today. So really fascinating story. Nintendo would also have contests for the Famicom disk system. They had a character called Disc-kun, and basically that stands for Disc Boy or Disc Man in English, and they would have gold discs that they would give away to winners and stuff like that. They had kind of contests, so it was kind of nice, kind of like the Nintendo World Championship here in the States back in the late 80s. They had a similar kind of contest in Japan. But overall, this is the Sharp Famicom disk system. This is a really cool system by Sharp. Now, one flaw about this system that I do want to point out is that the belt, and this is true for the disk drives by themselves, but the belt tends to wear off over age, so it doesn't necessarily work. I need to fix this one. That belt is not working in this particular model, but it's very common. They break and they snap, so it's an easy fix, but you need that belt, and it's kind of a unique belt to get it to work. But it's not a very expensive fix, but it's hard to find the right parts for sure. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate watching Games 81 in 3D, and hopefully you guys can subscribe, comment, and we'll see you soon. Take care.